And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green? And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded here, among these dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow of burning gold, bring me my arrows of desire, bring me my spear, O clouds unfold, bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. The end of the 19th century was a period of unprecedented upheaval. Factories sprouted from the ground, railways were laid at great length, urbanisation sprawled and beckoned, and masses organised capitalistically and politically. All of this happened at dizzying speed. This was the moment the modern world crashed together and dragged people from the fields to the factory floor. Within a generation, the entire consciousness of life had changed. Science challenged deeply held views of the world. Darwin published On the Origins of Species in 1857. He pulled the gods down from the sky and transformed humans into just another animal. This was, of course, shocking, traumatizing, existentially threatening. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote in 1844 that deep within every human being there still lives the anxiety over the possibility of being alone in the world, forgotten by God, overlooked by the millions and millions in this enormous household. Nietzsche, famously proclaiming the death of God, argued that men would become nihilistic, lose their grounding, forsake their morals, if a new ethics of man did not come. "75
years in the story of the family as a social institution is very short indeed. And yet, in that time, the pattern of family life in America has undergone radical changes. On a farm in the 1880s, family life followed a pattern which had been characteristic of America from early colonial times."
Darwin, the death of God, the prosperity of industry, science, they all pointed towards something that could be terrifying. Freedom. Kierkegaard went on, "Anxiety may be compared with dizziness. He whose eye happens to look down into the yawning abyss becomes dizzy. But what is the reason for this? It's just as much in his own eyes as in the abyss, hence anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." Freedom was the expansion of options, of ways to live life personally, politically, and commercially. Warfare too was changing. Swords and single-shot rifles, of which there were only a few, were being replaced by stuttering guns that spat bullets at an incomprehensible rate, artillery and bombs that sent shrapnel shredding in a cacophony of unbearable noise. The word panic was used for the first time in 1879 by the psychiatrist Henry Maudsley to describe extreme agitation, trembling, and terror. People were nervous. Literally. A new diagnosis became popular amongst America's elites: neurasthenia. It was a contemporary form of what we probably call today stress, characterised by symptoms like fatigue, headache, and irritability. Neurasthenia, according to physician Charles Beard, was the result of a depletion of nervous energy, but was becoming more common as a reaction to the anxieties of the modern world and of the demands of American exceptionalism. Neurasthenia was almost a fashion. Adverts appeared selling nerve tonics, self-help books dominated the shelves, even breakfast cereals claimed to be able to cure American-itis. Beard argued in American Nervousness that there were 5 main causes of neurasthenia: steam power, the periodical press, the telegraph, the sciences, and the mental activity of women. He argued that these phenomena contributed to the competitiveness and speed of the modern world. Even time itself was to blame. He wrote, "The perfection of clocks and the invention of watches have something to do with modern nervousness, since they compel us to be on time, and excite the habit of looking to see the exact moment so as not to be late for trains or appointments. Before the general use of these instruments of precision in time, there was a wider margin for all appointments. We are under constant strain, mostly unconscious, oftentimes in sleeping as well as in waking hours, to get somewhere or to do something at some definite moment. The recently laid telegraphs also meant that prices and information could be sent around the world at a moment's notice, piling the pressure on merchants to keep up with the latest news from all around the world. According to the pre-psychological way of understanding the human mind, all these phenomena were somatic, they were bodily. It was phenomena hitting the nerve ends and draining its life force. The body and mind were simply machines. Unnatural modern noises were a drain on nerve force too. Beard wrote that nature, the moans and road of the wind, the rustling and trembling of the leaves, the swaying of the branches, the roar of the sea and of waterfalls, the singing of birds, and even the cries of some wild animals, are mostly rhythmical to a greater or lesser degree, and almost varying, if not intermittent. Machinery, locomotion, housekeeping, etc., though are unrhythmical, unmelodious, annoying, and infurious, they cause severe molecular disturbance.
Genes, inventions, power, black out the past, forget the quiet cities, bring in the steam and steel, the iron men, the giants, open the throttle, all aboard, the promised land. Pillars of smoke by day, pillars of fire by night, pillars of progress. Machines to make machines, production to expand production. There's wood and wheat and kitchen sinks and calico, all ready-made in tons and carload lots, enough for tens, thousands, millions, millions, faster and faster, better and better.
As with Kierkegaard's anxieties over freedom, for Beard, politics and religion also added to the drain. He wrote, "The experiment attempted on this continent of making every man, every child and every woman an expert in politics and theology is one of the costliest of experiments with living human beings. A factor in producing American nervousness is, beyond dispute, the liberty allowed and the stimulus given to Americans to rise out of the possibilities in which they were born. Excitement and disappointment were a drain on nerve force too. But one innovation was so emblematic of the shock of modernity, of the distortion of time, of the inability of man to adapt to his surroundings, that it's mentioned almost everywhere the topic's discussed. The railway.
New inventions in communication and ways of travel had an important impact on the traditional family pattern. In 1880, families had rarely traveled long distances, but with the spread of rail facilities, they began to travel more.
Historian Wolfgang Scheivelbusch argues that the railways didn't just change travel, but changed the very notion of time itself, and as such changed people's consciousness. Before the railways, cities, towns and villages had local times which had to be standardised for train timetables. London time ran 4 minutes ahead of time in Reading, 7 minutes and 30 seconds ahead of Cirencester time, 14 minutes ahead of Bridgewater time. And all of a sudden, people could imagine being in other places much more easily. This changed the very way they think, broadened the possibilities that the mind could contemplate. It was such a part of the cultural zeitgeist of the time that on the 3rd of October 1868, Illustrated London News reported that 5 theatres were all performing the same incident. Someone tied to, or unconscious, on a track, while a train came hurtling towards them. These productions made use of modern special effects, using lights and smoke. The Times described them as a perfect fever of excitement. The theatres performing these spectacles were open to people outside of the centre of London for the first time, who could travel in on the omnibus or train, the very same transport they were about to be thrilled by their fear of. Railway accidents were common. One in 1868 killed 33 people. One passenger wrote of the incident that, "We were startled by a collision and a shock. I immediately jumped out of the carriage when a fearful sight met my view. Already the 3 passenger carriages in front of ours, the vans and the engine, were enveloped in dense sheets of flame and smoke, rising fully 20 feet. No words can convey the instantaneous nature of the explosion and conflagration. I had actually got out almost before the shock of the collision was over, and this was the spectacle which had already presented itself. Not a sound, not a scream, not a struggle to escape or a movement of any sort was apparent in the doomed carriages. It was as though an electric flash had at once paralysed and stricken every one of their occupants. So complete was the absence of any presence of living or struggling life in them that it was imagined that the burning carriages were destitute of passengers." This idea of instantaneous death, mixed with machinery, was so new, so shocking, that it dominated the culture. Charles Dickens himself was involved in a train crash and wrote the ghost story The Signal Man afterwards. According to his children, he was never the same again. All of this, industry, commercialism, fear, anxiety, thrill, trains, culminated in an emphasis on sensation and the birth of sensationalism. The point of sensation, of sensationalism, is, of course, the senses. The modern world could trigger them, play on them, manipulate them, sell to them, and all at a tremendous speed. The famous Irish playwright Dion Buchicult made sensation the centre of his plays. He intended to electrify the audience. A review of one of his plays illustrates this emphasis on the senses. The house is gradually enveloped in fire, and bells of engines are heard. Enter a crowd of persons. Badger seizes a bar of iron, dashes in the ground floor window. The interior is seen in flames. Badger leaps in and disappears. Shouts from the mob. The shutters of the garret fall and reveal Badger in the upper floor. Badger disappears as if falling with the inside of the building. The shutters of the window fall away, and the inside of the house is seen, gutted by the fire. A cry of horror is uttered by the mob. Badger drags himself from the ruins. Drama of such speed and excitement had rarely been seen before.
Maybe the question is, can we afford all this disorder? The hospitals, the jails, reformatories, the wasted years of childhood. These are future citizens, voters, lawmakers, mothers, fathers. We've got the skill, we've found the way. We've built the cities. All that we know about machines and soils and raw materials and human ways of living is waiting. We can reproduce the pattern and better it 1,000 times.
In the early 1860s, sensation novels suddenly became popular. In 1866, an article in the Westminster Gazette lamented that all minor novelists were now sensationalist. Literary critic D.A. Miller describes it like this: "The genre offers us one of the first instances of modern literature to address itself primarily to the sympathetic nervous system, where it grounds its characteristic adrenaline effects, accelerated heart rate and respiration, increased blood pressure, and pallor resulting from vasoconstriction, and so on." H.L. Mansell wrote that there were novels of the warming pan type, and others of the galvanic battery type, some which gently stimulate a particular feeling, and others which carry the whole nervous system by steam. The purpose of the sensation novel was to do one thing: to shock the nervous system. Take this quote from Mary Braddon's Lady Audley's Secret. We hear every day of murders committed in the country. Brutal and treacherous murders, slow, protracted agonies from poisons administered by some kindred hand, sudden and violent deaths by cruel blows, inflicted with a stake cut from some spreading oak, whose every shadow promised peace. In the country of which I write, I have been shown a meadow in which, on a quiet summer Sunday evening, a young farmer murdered the girl who had loved and trusted him, and yet, even now, with that stain of the foul deed upon it, the aspect of the spot is peace. This was entirely new for the time. It seems to articulate shock and danger where there was once peace. It seems, through sensation, to allow the reader to practice the new emotions required in a modern, fast, unexpected world. From peace to this was emblematic of the move from the countryside to the city. So what was lost in these tumultuous years? I think Charles Beard and Kierkegaard in many ways hit it on the head. The idea of freedom, the anxiety of choice, the cacophony of noise, the pressure of time, all becomes demanding. And it's a type of demand that didn't exist in agricultural society. Yes, life also became better, more prosperous, more options. But remembering what we lost is also important. So if modernity is still a shock to you, then slow down, take some time, turn off your phone, stop thinking, relax. If you like these videos, I need your help, and here's my request. If you think you get the same value from 4 of these videos as you do from just 1 cup of coffee, then please consider pledging just $1 per video. That's $3 to $4 per month to keep this channel going. You can even limit your pledge to $1 a month, and if you pledge $5, I'll add your name to the credits. To those that already support then and now, thank you so much. This channel just wouldn't exist without you. You can also hit like, share, follow me on Twitter and Facebook, etc. All of these things really contribute to helping then and now grow. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.